Shalom, shalom, lakam, which is peace unto you all. Ha'i rab tawab la atam za'ach yawam on Chagadol Charlotte, which is good evening. This is your brother Yawam from the GMS camp in Charlotte. Nachamatam kaya hamlakat hashamayim kwara, repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Called layim la la b'naw Yahweh bahasham Yahweh shai bahasham rachak wadashwa mashana laza konim nawa wamalakim sharach Chagadol, which is all praises to our Father Yahweh, which means He exists. Bahasham, and the name Yahweh Shai delivers in double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Zayah Shaya, this is Isaiah chapter 63, and we'll get verse 1. And it says, "Who is this that cometh from Edom, with dyed garments from Basra? This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save." All right, I just want to go into verse 1. All right, because this is going into, ultimately, the Lord Yahweh Shai, when He returns. All right, so it says, "Who is this that cometh from Edom, with dyed garments from Basra?" Let's get a quick precept. This is Hosea chapter 12, and we'll get verse 10. And it says, "I have also spoken by the prophets. I have multiplied visions and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets." All right, now going back to Isaiah 63 and verse 1. And it says, "Who is this that cometh from Edom, with dyed garments from Basra?" So this ultimately is it's a similitude, it's a picture, all right, of, what the Lord ultimately is coming back to do. All right. It says, "Who is this that cometh from Edom, with dyed garments from Basra? This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save." All right. So the Lord Yahweh Shai is coming back. He's coming back, to do pretty much, to collect hats. All right. As it mentions in the scriptures, roughly paraphrasing, it goes into how the Lord ultimately is going to wound the heads over many countries. All right. Because the Lord Yahweh Shai, is coming back to rule. All right. Contrary, to, what these nations believe, we got next. All right. As pursuant to Isaiah, the first chapter and the 26th verse. All right. Also, scriptures like Psalms, the second chapter. All right. Revelation 2 and verse 25 on down. Pretty much how, the Lord Yahweh Shai is going to rule. All right. But nevertheless, continuing on, it says, "With dyed garments from Basra." All right. And Basra ultimately goes into, a chief city in Edom. So it says, "This that is glorious in his apparel," because when the Lord came, the first time, He was on that ass's colt. This is, let me see, Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 9. We'll get Genesis 49 and 11. And it says, we'll start at verse 9. It says, "Judah is a lion's whelp." Verse 8, it says, "Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee," because Judah is the head tribe. So it says, "Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion. And as an old lion, who shall rouse him up?" It says, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be." And ultimately, the Lord Yahweh Shai, the spirit of the scriptures, pretty much, the Lord Yahweh Shai is synonymous with the scriptures. He comes in the volume of the book. All right. And ultimately, he is gathering, he first and foremost with this word. All right. And then, during the time of, destruction, all right, while the ICBMs is coming down, when the chariots is, doing a cleanup job, zapping the heathen in 2/3, the Lord Yahweh Shai is going to be delivering his elect. All right, so that's another, it's twofold, you see, because the Lord is going to gather his elect, as pursuant to the Matthew, the 24th chapter and the 31st verse. So it says, reading it again, it says, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be." It says, "Binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass is caught unto the choice vine. He washes his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes." And scriptures go into, how ultimately, as we got in Isaiah, the 63rd chapter, "Wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, and thy garments as him that treadeth in the wine fat," roughly paraphrasing, because those that would tread the grapes, in the wine press, pretty much, it was a lot of, it looked like a lot of bloodshed, But let's also get this, because the Lord Yahweh Shai, he came humble. All right, this is Zechariah chapter 9. And we'll get verse 9. And it says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Taziah Wan Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem, behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly, and riding upon an ass, and upon the foal of an ass. So the Lord Yahweh Shai came, he came lowly, he came humble. You see, but when he returns, he's going to come back majestically. All right, he's going to return on the chariot. That's why it says traveling in the greatness of his strength. Reading it again, it says, who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Basra? This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. He's coming back upon that father ship. It says, I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. I quoted Matthew 24 and verse 31. So I don't want to out, we get to that, but I want to get a few scriptures before I touch on that point. Let's get we'll get Isaiah chapter 47 and verse 3, because we're going into Edom. All right, but who's the leadership, who's ruling Babylon? All right, Esau, Edom. All right, so reading down from verse 1, it says, come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon, sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. All right, because ultimately, that preeminence. All right, ultimately, rulership is being taken from Babylon. All right, it says, O virgin daughter of Babylon, because ultimately this place takes on the ways of ancient Babylon. It says, there is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Because at one point, before the shameful spewing has been placed upon, Esau's glory, upon his history and the things that he ultimately took pride in, this place was the place to be. All right, all the nations want to come over here and do business, and so on and so forth. You see, but now in these times, no one wants to do anything to do with America, Babylon the Great, because this lifestyle is not sustainable. And then also, it's a shame, to in these times to call yourself a so-called American. Verse 2, it says, take the millstones and grind meal. Uncover thy locks, make bare the thigh, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yet thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man, because the Lord Yahweh is dispatching his son Yahweh Shai, ultimately, to come and destroy. All right, come and destroy the hegemonies of Esau, Edom. All right, and again, the Lord is not coming, humble on the ass's cart as he did before. He's going to be traveling in the greatness of his strength. All right, so it says traveling in the greatness of his strength. So let's get another precept. Let's get we'll get 2nd Esdras chapter 13, and we'll get verse 1. All right, it says, and it came to pass after 7 days I dreamed a dream by night, and lo, there arose a wind from the sea, that it moved all the waves thereof. And I beheld, and lo, that man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven. And when he turned his countenance to look, all things trembled that were seen under him. And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth faileth when it faileth the fire. And after and after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number from the four winds of the heaven, to subdue the man that came out of the sea. It's talking about the sea of the the sea of the firmament. All right, because you got the waters beneath, and then you got the waters when when the Lord Yahweh Shai cracks those clouds, because it's waters above the firmament, But it says, verse 6, it says, but I beheld, and lo, he graved himself a great mountain and flew up upon it. All right, traveling in the greatness of his strength. It says, but I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not. It says, and after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet durst fight. It says, and lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war, but only I saw that he sent out of his mouth, as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests. And they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, and burned them up every one, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid, so ultimately, the Lord Yahweh Shai, he gonna be traveling in, how Jake say, traveling in style, the Lord Yahweh Shai is coming back, glorious, majestically. All right, he's not gonna meet Esau, Edom as a man. All right, let's get this too. This is our Revelation chapter 1 and verse 7. All right, it says, behold, he cometh with clouds. All right, in the chariots. And the chariots talking about the so-called so-called UFOs. It says, "And every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, Amen." So ultimately, again, the Lord Yahweh Shai is returning. With the thousands of heaven going into the angels, all right, and riding in the vehicles of the Lord Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. But it says, "And every eye shall see him, and they also which pierce him," because it's going to be placed upon their spirit. Those that ultimately, crucified the Lord back in those times, it's going to be placed on their spirit so that they realize that they was there. And the Lord Yahweh Shai, ultimately is going to, destroy him. All right. But nevertheless, let's go back. Isaiah chapter 63 and verse 1, it says, "Who is this that cometh from Edom with the dyed garments from Basra? This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save." All right, so let's also get this. Let's get we'll get Isaiah chapter 13, and we'll get verse 15. And it says, "Everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword." All right, reading it again, it says, "Everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword." Because ultimately, those that are that don't repent from this society, those that want to join themselves into Esau, Edom, hey, they're going to be destroyed right along with them. All right. So let's also get this, and I'm gonna go ahead and close. But this is actually, let me get this. We'll get Second Esdras chapter 6, and we'll give verse 9. And it says, "For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth." So showing that when the Lord Yahweh Shai ultimately returns, Esau, even the so-called white man, will be in rulership, because this is a future prophecy. All right. And, during these times, this is what's going to be taking place. This is Isaiah chapter 45 and verse 17. And it says, "But Israel shall be saved in the Lord with an everlasting salvation. Yea, shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end." So the elect of the nation of Israel, will be delivered. And just to prove that point, let's get this as well. All right. And again, I don't want to Zaza Banayapa, Lord's will. This is a beautiful edification through the Spirit. All right. This is Matthew chapter 24 and verse 31. You see, because it said, "I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save." All right. Roughly paraphrasing, Matthew 24 and 31, it says, "And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other." So as, the ICBMs is pelting Babylon the Great and various different other places upon the planet Earth, and as the Lord Yahweh Shai and the angels are ultimately doing a cleanup job around the earth, the elect is going to be being beamed up. All right, so going back to this Isaiah 63 and verse 1, it says, "Who is this that cometh from Edom?" All right, we got Isaiah 45 and 17, also Matthew 24 and 31. We also got Second Esdras, the 13th chapter. The Lord Yahweh Shai is going to be coming from Edom. All right, just as, in Deuteronomy, the 33rd chapter, when he delivered, the law unto the nation of Yasharallah. It says, "Who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Basra? This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength in the chariots." It says, "I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save." The Lord Yahweh Shai is coming to deliver his elect. So I just want to go into, Isaiah 63 and verse 1. I don't want to Zaza Banaipa. Lord's will, that was a beautiful edification to the Spirit. Wa I don't want to Zaza Atam Yashi Layala Tawab. Lord's will, you have a good night. Wa Shalom Lakam, which is peace unto you all. Shalom, shalom.